Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California, this is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael, and today we were so excited to have on the show Angela Zeyn. She's a healer, a clairvoyant, a medium, and a friend we've known for quite some time now. She's an ordained minister of the teachings of the Essenes and a Reiki master. She's able to communicate clearly with and for spirit in any form or dimension. But today, we want to ask her about a very specific ability she has, and that is to communicate with animals, both alive and in spirit. So we're very excited to talk to her about this. But before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our episode. We're super excited to have Angela here. She's been a good friend for a long time and first time on our show, so we'll have a lot of fun with her. She's an amazing person. Next week, we have a special treat again, Dr. George Swimmer, Krista's dad, and he will be doing another episode on spirit attachment. And for those of you who haven't gone back and listened to it, the show he did on spirit attachment in the last 3 years we've done this show, still one of my most favorite episodes. It was absolutely awesome. So you guys might want to go back and check that out ahead of time. So he'll be doing that. Get all the information on our show on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. It helps us to cover some of our production costs, and we very much appreciate it. And if you can't afford it, one of the best ways to help our show is just to click subscribe and like, and YouTube seems to like it, and they do more to promote us. So help us a lot by subscribing to our episodes, and you'll also get a little notification when we go live. And sorry, we're going to have to record the next couple because we're having some internet issues that's keeping us from streaming, but we will hopefully be back to live streaming in the near future. And so I don't want to take up any more of your time. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Krista. So take it away, Krista.
Great. Thanks, Michael. I wanted to add, my father recently listened to the show Jim did on exorcism, and he got inspired to do more on spirit attachment. So I'm kind of curious to see where he's going to go with the second part. He hasn't told me yet. Anyway, welcome, Angela.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. And how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on today.
I'm really happy to have you on. We've had such great conversations when we were at the Mystic Journey on Sundays about animals. And I do recall the one time you rescued, it was a cat, correct?
Yeah, a cat. She currently is inside living with me. She lived outside for like 18 years as a feral cat. The people in the neighborhood told me many stories about her, but she kind of adopted me a couple years before that. And I was working with her to get in the house, and she got attacked by a dog at my front door. Actually, the dog jumped over the 5-foot brick wall and got her instead of the squirrel. So she came inside. She's been inside ever since. It's been like 2 years now. She's lovable as can be right now. It's probably because she's, on her way out the door, but she is so lovable. I can pick her up and do anything I want with her, pretty much. So she's quite amazing. She's a blessing.
That was such a great story. I know that you got really involved in the rescuing her. And that's one thing I respect about you is that you also care about just the animals in the world. And I think that you have a nice balance between, working with the live animals and also animals in spirit, from what I can tell. But I'm kind of curious, how did you discover you could do this?
Yeah, when people ask me that, I always kind of sit still for a second. But when I was a kid, I was around lots of wild animals and lots of tame animals too. But I think that was just part of it. I didn't realize how much I communicated with them. But in my early 20s, I had a snake dropped off, like literally dropped on me, like, here, you're going to take this. You're the only one that pays attention to it. And I had no cage for him, nothing. It was kind of a crazy situation. And I had him for 7 years. So during that time period, he would telepathically communicate with me. He would come to me in my dreams or just tell me what was going on. We had a really strong bond, and people would be like, oh, snakes don't think, or they don't feel anything, or, you know, whatever thoughts they had about the animal. And he was completely different. It kind of upset me at that point because I was like, no, you don't understand. But I was going out of the country a lot at that point. And before I would leave the country, I would sleep with him. He would actually get in bed with me and sleep with me long ways. The whole night. He just let me like wrap around him and hug him because he knew I'd be leaving. The people that would take care of him when I would be gone, he would come to me in my dreams and tell me he was hungry. And I'd call him up. I'd be like, did you feed him yet? No, we haven't fed him. Like, yeah, he's really hungry. He keeps coming to me. So that was kind of the real conscious beginning, I can say. And then it just kept going. You know, I'd be out on hikes and I'd see other animals, whether they were rattlesnakes. That would scare the hell out of most people I hiked with, because they're like, if you get bit, how are we going to get you out of here?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd sit down on the ground and actually have conversations with them. One time during it was a New Year's Day, and I went hiking with my friend. It was in Burbank, California, and there was a mountain lion standing up on the ridge. And she's like, please don't call it down here. Please don't do that. So I've had some funny situations where people are actually afraid of me calling the animals to them or what was going to happen. So, and then a friend of mine's like, you talk to animals all the time. Why are you not doing this professionally to actually do it as a job and career and help other people with their pets? So that's how it began.
That's really fascinating. Now, what kind of a snake was your snake?
He was a Burmese python.
I was thinking probably it was because, you know, that there's a really strong connection with the oracles in the Greek time, the Pythia and the python. So you might have a past life there. You know, I did a little research on the Greek oracles, and they had a huge influence in civilization. There was a point where they were very well educated, whoever became an oracle. And so sometimes they taught moral lessons. It wasn't only being psychic, and evidently it had a huge influence on culture and civilization. Then it kind of deteriorated, just like, you know, sometimes the psychic world does, you know. So I thought about that when you said that, and also how certain cultures really revere the snake, and they're snake deities. And so it's a really interesting connection that you made right away with a snake, it seems like to me.
Yeah, you know, they're silent communicators. They don't bark, or the only way they can communicate is hiss, really, right? So it was the only way he taught me how to communicate with him, because it was the only way I could really communicate with him, right?
Right.
Yeah, they're amazing creatures, really. They're very intelligent. I have tons of stories of him. I used to put him in a big hockey bag and take him to the park. So, you know, some people would enjoy him and be like, wow, there's a snake. And then other people would run like, she's the devil. She's got a snake with her. So it was always an adventure for sure, taking him out places. Yeah, I have a lot of stories about that snake. But he really taught me a lot, for sure. He really did.
That's so cool. Now, do you find that you have more certain animals you work with when professionally, like cats or dogs or rabbits, more than others, like common animals that people come with questions about?
Mainly cats and dogs. The normal pets that people have are the animals I end up normally talking to. Yeah, that's the biggest percentage is cats and dogs.
Yeah, it would make sense based on what people have in their life.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most common animal that comes up. I mean, I think about the people that have actually called me for appointments, and yeah, it's always cats and dogs. It's a rare event that I speak to. I actually spoke to somebody's bug one time. They had like a beetle.
Aw. I love that.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to the pet beetle. So But yeah, mostly common cats and dogs. And it's always an adventure. Some people call me because, their animal is sick and has an issue and the vet can't figure it out, or they want to know before they go to the vet what I'm picking up on, or behavior issues. And sometimes people just do it for fun.
Right.
Just because they want to hear what the animal had to say about them and about their life and what they want or need. I've had some really, really fun phone calls, and the animals are like straight to the point. They're black and white. There's no guessing games. There's just no gray area with them. They're very clear. They're black and white. It's just, this is how it is. This is what I think. This is what I feel. This is what I see. And they're very in tune with the person that they're with. And a lot of people don't realize how in tune they really are. They're so in tune. It's like, I've talked to people that what they're doing, their animal is picking up on what they're doing and reacting from it. They just don't realize how much that it affects them. One woman came to I did an event, and one woman came in, and I think it was her dog. She had a dog. That's what it was. And she was like, I broke up with my girlfriend and she moved out. And ever since then, if I walk into a room, my dog just glares at me and walks out of the room. And the dog was really seriously so mad at her because of the simple fact that she was the one that caused the breakup, and the dog wanted nothing to do with her. And it was apparent by the actions going on.
It's so true. During the pandemic, we have a crow, and she's older now. She's over 20. And at the beginning of the pandemic, the thing that I was the most sort of struck by was, people waiting in line for food. And I wasn't, after a while, worried about not getting food myself, but I was worried about other people not getting food. And it really bothered me. And for the first time ever, she started trying to feed me. And it was incredible. I mean, I didn't know at first what she was doing. And then I realized what she was doing. She did it all through the pandemic. She just kept trying. She would regurgitate. And during her hormonal period, it was so touching. It was really amazing. She knew. And so I totally agree with you. They totally pick up. And then, I'm sure you've had the experience with your own animals where, like, if you're sick, they'll come in and sort of sleep on that part of your body, or, they're so soulful animals.
Yeah, it's unconditional love, literally. They really know how to be in the present moment. They don't want you to be anywhere else. They're the perfect example of being in the present moment, and they want you to be in the present moment with them. Mm-hmm. They're great teachers of that. And yeah, they totally pick up on, illness, or they'll, a lot of times my animals, when they're not feeling well, they will literally lay down on me or lay beside me and put the part of their body that doesn't feel well against me.
Ah, interesting.
To naturally get its own, their healing from it, mm-hmm. from touching me. So yeah, they're just, they know what's up. They know what they need, what they don't need. They're very clear about that. And, I tell people all the time, you can telepathically communicate with your animals. Maybe you can't hear them back, but they'll try to show you somehow that they get the message. But it's all telepathy. So it all comes from pictures in your mind, mm-hmm. And you're like, how do I transmit that? You just think of the picture in your mind of what you want to share with them. Maybe it's a video that you create in your mind and you send it to them. You basically think of them and give it to them so they get the information. They do understand what we're speaking, and it doesn't matter what language you speak, because I've had boyfriends that speak Hebrew, or they, speak Spanish, whatever, and it doesn't matter. My animals always, they always understand exactly what's being said. So there's no language barrier on that either. It's just simply they go by frequency and vibration and what you're putting off.
So if you did want to learn to just communicate with your own animals to help them better, is that something that you teach people, or do you think it's something people can learn to at least do modestly?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've never taught people. I have a friend who went through training with a woman to learn how to communicate with animals, and now he does that, and I think he teaches people how to communicate. I've personally never taught anybody how to do it, just by sharing simple information like I just did about telepathically communicating and paying attention. But yeah, I think it's because it just came so natural for me that I really just haven't taken the time or energy to tap into how I would teach somebody else to do it.
Well, you just did a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I try to help people, to understand a little bit of how it works so they can get more in tune with their animal and they can work better together.
Now, is it the same method for you if the animal has passed and is in the spirit form? If you communicate with an animal that is no longer alive, is it the same method for you, or do you use a separate skill with it?
No, it's kind of all the same to me. When I speak to animals that have passed, or people that have passed, or angels or guides or demons or whoever I talk to, whether they're alive or past, it's kind of all the same for me because I'm speaking to their spirit and their higher self the whole time. So I don't really have a different thing I have to gauge in. I may flip dimensional levels and not realize it just because it's just the flow for me. But yeah, I don't really have any different technique to do.
So what is something you've been surprised about when an animal has said something maybe funny or unique to the animal?
Oh, gosh, let me think about this. That's a good one. They definitely will tell their people's secrets sometimes, and I'm not getting anything specific popping in my head at the moment. Hopefully by the time we get done with this interview, before then, I'll have something popping in my head. I guess I should have thought about it before.
No, that's okay.
They come up with some funny things. They definitely call their people out. For sure. It
sounds like animals would be pretty truthful.
Oh yeah, there's no, like I said, they have no guards up. They have no gray area. They're just like, this is how it is. This is what's going on. So they definitely, like, sometimes during the session, the person's calling because they want to see what's up with their animal. But then the animal will eventually turn it around at times and start talking about the person and what the person needs to do to help themselves. Because they see what the person's going through. Maybe they're angry, maybe they're eating too much, maybe they're emotional and depressed, maybe something's happening, and the animal is clued in to what's going on and gives a lot of information a lot of times of how that person can help themselves.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm still not having anything funny pop in my head
yet.
Oh,
that's okay. Now, do you ever get anybody calling about like cats that don't get along or animals? Is it usually just like a single animal that they're calling about?
Oh no, I've had people call me with like a house full of animals, like, okay, this is a good one that popped in. So somebody called me about one of their dogs, and they had two other dogs and a cat. And as I was talking to the one dog, the other dog started talking, and then the other dog, and then the cat, and they all started talking. They were like, well, we have things to say too. So they want to talk. They all want to talk usually. And when it comes to behavioral stuff, when it comes to the whole not getting along, I end up finding a lot of information about somebody pissed me off over there and did that, or, they're in my space too much and they're trying to overrule everything. They can get into some funny stories about what happens in the household. They call each other assholes a lot. And I know sometimes, the information comes through and it comes through in the language that I'm going to understand too. So it communicates through me in that way. So I know sometimes it's literally my wording, but it is kind of funny when they call them out.
It is funny how people, like, for instance, I'm a bird person, and, birds, especially like we have little zebra finches, they always sound good, but they're arguing sometimes. You can tell. And I recently, I didn't want to say anything on the post that somebody was saying about they'd rescued this bird, and it was a really great thing, and how the bird was singing and how that, sing through your pain. I said, well, they're not always saying pleasant things, just so you know. I live with birds, and you can tell by their, their actions. You can tell if they're about to have a fight, and it's like, and it sounds pretty. But the other finch is just about to get walloped. You know, it is actually the first time you see a finch dominate another finch. It's a little shocking because they're so cute. But if you have two male finches, it's like, you know, they want to prove they're the alpha. And so we had this one finch who was an amazing finch, Miracle. And whenever we'd have a new finch, he would try to sit on it. And once he proved he was the big finch, everything was cool.
Yeah, he had to like claim his territory and know his dominant position.
So, and like I said, he sounded good doing it, but it was definitely not what it appeared to be. And that, you know, obviously you didn't need to even be telepathic because you could see the action.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's a lot of it. All you have to do is stand back and be the observer, and you can actually witness a lot of things of what they're trying to say to you and what they're trying to say to each other about things, for sure.
Yeah, it's true. You know, just sitting there and observing. You also, I find, discover things as, you know, even about your own animals if you just quietly observe them. Because sometimes I feel they show you, when you live with them for a long time, they'll start showing you unusual things because they're comfortable with you. And so they'll say, well, this is part of me too.
Yeah, because they want to show you who they are. They want to show you what's going on. Yeah. It's just, we have to be quiet enough and pay attention, you know, learn how to be the observer, especially with them, because they don't speak words like we do. So, you know, and if you can't tap into the telepathically hear them, which most people can't, but, you know, it's all about being the observer. And I think that's just for animals and people too. If we could all stand back for a moment when we meet people or when we're around others in our lives and just in the present moment and observe instead of being in what we think it is or what it is, and just be the observer, we can get so much information about our loved ones, whether they have fur or not. Yeah, you know, it's so important.
It's an excellent point. You're absolutely right. And just to quietly observe and you'll see things starting to, I think, you know, maybe certain behaviors that are starting, so it hasn't suddenly come out from nowhere.
Exactly. Because most of the times things are going on for a while and people are just all in their own heads or whatever and not paying attention to realize that suddenly the animal's really, really sick. I mean, of course, there's acute illnesses that happen, but most of the time they're showing you signs all the time.
Yeah.
You just have to pay attention. It's you know, I say that to my clients a lot, not just with their animals, but with other people. If you just stand back and pay attention, my gosh, you get to see everything about that person. They'll tell you exactly who they are. And so will the animal.
Yeah, it's a really excellent point. I totally agree with you. Birds, for instance, generally don't show their illnesses unless it's something like they're bleeding. I learned that early on, is that you have to pay attention because they hide really well that they're sick. They hide pain. They rarely cry, but you won't think that one of the signs is they won't sing as much. But I forget where I read it right away. They said you have to really watch birds because they really can be ill for quite a while, and they don't show it. It's their way, I guess, of protecting themselves, you know.
Yeah, it's the survival instinct. Yeah. Just like I think most animals do that, but that's interesting about birds.
Yeah, it's just specific. I remember specifically, and it's true. And the other thing I learned about birds, and I learned this kind of the hard way, especially little birds, they can die of shock really easily. And, you know, they're very, very sensitive to the environment. So, and I saw that happen with one of my finches right after 9/11. And I think it was just I had the television on and I was crying a lot, and he just kind of dropped dead not soon after. And I felt terrible, you know, and I really feel like it was the shock of everything going on, you know. And now I know that. I don't know if it was just me or the television or maybe the whole energy of the world, because they're super sensitive and to certain sounds and vibrations. I think, especially smaller birds, you know. And we all know that animals are quite psychic in different ways. I mean, we all know that. Anyone in the animal world has stories about their dog being psychic, or their cat, or horses. I mean, and then there's books on it, and they're incredible stories.
Oh, yeah. they'll save your life literally because they pick up on things beforehand.
Yeah, it is amazing. Now, have you, since you've been doing this, you've been doing this for decades. Have you found there are certain parts of your ability that have expanded? There are certain things that by doing this for so long, you feel something has deepened, or you've learned some aspect of your ability that you might not have if you hadn't been doing it with, other people's animals too.
That's a really good question. I will say expanding from the place of me just having communication with my own animals or random animals, and then bringing it more into a professional realm. I think the more that I do it, just like with anything else, it's like building a muscle. The more that you do it, the more it becomes easier to do and you become stronger in it. So from doing it with other people's animals the way I do now, it's definitely allowed me to drop into that space quicker. I think it's made me more cognizant of what I'm doing, because before it was just a natural thing that was happening with me. Like I wasn't thinking about it. And now it's made it more cognizant. It's taught me a lot about myself in the sense of just how to function. Like I was talking about earlier about being in the present moment. And it's just deepened my sense to the connection that we all have. That's a really deep thing. It's like, you logically understand it, you get it, you read about it, you have your experiences, you know that life force is all connected. Anything that's like got a life pulse is all connected. But when I've been talking to the animals to such an extreme, it just deepens it even more to the sense of how much we really are all intertwined together and connected. And it doesn't matter what form it is. It doesn't matter if you're human or an animal or a plant or, anything. We're all really, truly connected together. So it's definitely put a lot of depth into that for me. I just love the purity of animals and the innocence. It makes me want to protect them even more than I already was. Yeah.
That's so true. The one thing I've noticed as I've gotten more, I work mostly through just using the medicine cards and my own. I just have always had a connection to nature. Like I've always, as a little girl, loved nature, and I wanted to protect it. In fourth grade, I was into sort of environmentalism for a little while, and I go in and out of trying to do something to help. But what I've noticed is I've become closer to the insect world. And I mean, I really notice it like in a way that I feel really connected to the bees and the spiders. And I found that was a little surprising. It wasn't, I've always liked the bees, but I feel like one time we have a little water fountain, and at the time it was a little well, and a little bee came to have a drink of water there. And Michael and I were so touched that we could help the little bee, and we could see him sitting there like having a drink. And, probably in the past, I just wouldn't have seen it, and it really touched me so that I still remember the little bee getting a drink at the well. And I noticed that there are more and more people like that, that notice and film it with maybe creatures we used to just ignore that aren't so cute and cuddly. That's what I like, I mean, all creatures serve a purpose. So I'm not sure about ticks. I'm sort of out to, I'm not sure I value the tick.
Yeah, I can't say I value ticks or fleas either. I really wonder what is their purpose here. I mean, I have a purpose, but wow, those, I don't really get that either. Yeah.
To torment us.
Yeah, gosh, it's funny that in the insect world, that was like an initiation to go through the insect world for me. To have that communication, start talking with insects, that was really like a full-blown initiation that went on. I feel like, the bee, I saved a bee. I actually brought a bee back to life one time, which was incredible. I mean, I don't give it to me. I give it to source energy that I called to flow through me, because I was at a volunteering thing, and in Hollywood, and this bee just came dive bombing in and landed on the ground in front of me. And I'm like, oh, you poor thing. And I pick it up and I put it in my hand and I start praying. And I'm like, why do you guys have to suffer so much? Like, you do so much good for the world. And then when you die, and I guess, logically, our bodies all go through something when we die. So we get that logical thing. But this was my state of mind. And so I kept blowing in my hands and praying. And I was so focused on the bee that when I was leaving, the guy who heads off the program was like, thanks for coming. And I was so like focused on the bee that I'm like, oh yeah, bye. And I got in my car and I was driving through Hollywood with this bee in my hand still. Oops, cat, sorry.
Oh, that's cute.
This is Ninu's. She's
Hello.
a rescue. All my animals are rescues. I had that bee in my hand, and I arrived at the front of my friend's house where I was going. And the bee had completely died in my hand, and it flipped upside down, the whole thing. It was dead. And I was like, okay, I'll bury you. But I still had it in my hands like this, and my hands were like so hot. And then I felt it moving. And I felt it moving some more. And I'm like, oh my God, it's coming back to life. Because it completely died. And it came back to life. And my friends were like, what do you got in your hand? Because they know how I am. So I'm like, I got a bee. They're like, go outside. So I sat in the backyard with this bee in my hand, and it just got stronger. And I watched it on my hand, and it came back to life, and it was like puffing up like a little superhero. So I watched all of its energy puff back up into it, and it flew off. It was amazing. So that was like one of the first things. And then the beetles, those big green June bugs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was a real initiation, because they kept flying at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I'm not ready for you yet. I'm not ready for you yet, because they want to land on me. And I'm like, I don't know. And then about a week later, that kept happening. And about a week later, I was walking, and I was really having a pissed off day. I hope I can swear. I'm not even really swearing.
That's fine. It's
anyway,
YouTube.
I was walking with my dogs, and it was hot, and I was coming back from the car garage, so I was definitely not happy about things. And I'm walking along, and I look down on the sidewalk, and there's a big giant beetle, and on the back of her is another beetle. And I didn't even think twice about them being beetles, or how I've been like not wanting to touch them or have them land on me. I just went up and scooped it up, because she was on the edge of the sidewalk going into the road. I scooped her up, and she just stayed on my hand. I couldn't get her off of my hand. I tried, and she wouldn't go off my hand. And they were mating, and I was really, in my anger and my upsetness, and they totally brought me to present moment. And I don't know if I should go into the extremity of what happened. Why not? I think you guys are open to this. So as I'm walking along with the beetle on my hand like this, and they're mating. When they climaxed, I had a surge of energy go through my body, like that was incredible. I've never felt something like that before, never felt it before, never felt it after. It was such a surge of energy that flowed through me for hours after that.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was, I have to tell you, my conversation with insects opened up even more and more and more from then. And, I just want to say something about, a lot of people don't realize this, but when animals come to you, it's because they choose you. It's not you choosing them. They choose you. And even insects, they choose you. It's a blessing. They're bringing their magic to you, their energy of healing or guidance or wisdom,
I totally agree with you. I've definitely felt I've been picked, especially animals I didn't really have a connection with before. And I was just open to it. But I think the main thing is to kind of be open to it. So was that those green beetles that look kind of like scarabs, those ones, and they kind of fly like kind of awkwardly, and they have this big noise. I love those guys. I always feel lucky when I see them, but they're not, they kind of bumble through the air, I notice,
Yeah. Yeah, they're quite awesome creatures. Now I'm like, oh, hey, like they're my friends every time I see them now. But it was really like an initiation to go through that, you know. And insects have been on the planet since the beginning of time,
Hmm.
from we know of, right? So they
Yeah,
carry so much wisdom with them.
absolutely.
So much wisdom.
And there's
Yeah,
some
they're
really
amazing.
beautiful insects out there. I follow a couple people on Instagram that they basically just photograph insects, and there's so many beautiful ones that are amazing looking. And I would have never got to see, some of them except for photography. And you're right, they're very old and they're interesting for sure. I mean, there's some I'm still certainly skittish of. Why wouldn't you be skittish of something that could hurt you? So.
Of course.
But the one thing I wanted to bring up, which you kind of mentioned, is what I have found. If you connect to nature, because you can also connect to trees and plants too, you'll never be fully lonely again. I mean, we still like to have the connection with our own kind, but what I found when I was going through really difficult times and I didn't have maybe a close friend or a relationship, I did find it that I have this other presence that's real. Like it's legitimate to have these relationships that are as fulfilling as people relationships, and sometimes more fulfilling.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. I like how you stated that we're never really, you realize how much you're not alone and you don't have to be alone because you can connect to all that. Yeah, it is very fulfilling. It's very healing. It's very loving. Um, it's a beautiful blessing that I think a lot of humans walk around the planet and don't recognize that's there for them.
Yeah, it's there for everyone. And that's the one thing I've noticed about just using the medicine cards. I had this one client, and he was a very intense man, very smart. And I always have people pick an animal card at the end of every reading, and just as kind of a temporary ally. So he never would say anything, though. He never told me later he liked it or not. So after several years, I thought, I don't think he likes this. I don't want to force it, down his throat. So I didn't do it at the end of the reading. And he said to me, well, where's my medicine card? And I was like, oh my God, he does like it. So after that, I thought, doesn't matter if they don't say anything. He proved to me that it works. Everyone wants to feel connected to the natural world, which is the reason I think the medicine cards exist. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, we have a really dear friend, and she's an amazing animal person and rescuer. She had a cat that she loved and had very specific behaviors. And when it died, she asked the cat to come back as a dog. And it did. And the reason she knew was these very specific behaviors. Now, have you experienced that yourself with an animal just coming back, reincarnating in your life or someone else I'm just kind of curious. And I totally believe her. She's not one of these people that would make something up like that, And it's the only time it's happened, I think, for her.
Okay. Yeah, I have people ask me a lot if are my animals coming back to me again, or is this animal? And yes, I have experienced people with their animals that were an animal they had at another time in life. I'm trying to think of specifics. Of course, when I'm in the spot, I'm like, I can't remember anything.
That's all right.
No, it's okay. But yes is my answer to that. I have had people that I've talked to their animals that were, and I've talked to animals that were people before. In other lives. They were people, and how they carry their personality and their characteristics through.
Now that's interesting, because I believe that personally that's possible, but some of the Buddhist views on reincarnation is you can't go back and forth. An animal can become a person, but the person can't become an animal. But I don't think that's true. And I think it's maybe because I see animals differently. I don't see them as lower.
Yeah, no, exactly. Actually, I think they're more intelligent than most people. Sorry.
That's true of some animals. I agree.
I just do. They listen to their instincts. They're not in the way of their instincts. They're just really intelligent. And they function on higher levels than most people are consciously aware of. They have the ability to do it, but they're not always taking themselves there. But yeah, from my experience, animals become people and people become animals. And, we don't just incarnate on this planet. I'm sure you know that. We incarnate on other planets too, and galaxies.
Now, how do you feel about the animal's relationship with death? How do you feel animals see death compared to like a person viewing death, like their own death?
They're normally not, I don't experience any of them being afraid of death. Some of them want an easier journey of leaving by going to the vet and having a shot and being taken out. I had a cat who passed away last year, and he was really young and he had kidney disease. And he was very clear that he did not want to be taken to a vet and let go. He really wanted to go through the whole process naturally. And like I said, I've talked to other people where their animals are like, yeah, you can take me now, or, I'm okay. But no, they don't have fear. They understand it. They understand that it's not the end. And they understand that it's just part of their journey to be here and to leave. They have just a much clearer understanding. They don't have all the, and I think because humans have so much religious programming and different programmings going on, that it gets in the way of them just naturally being in the cycle of life and death.
I agree. We had a little black cat that we adopted, and we didn't know she was really old when we adopted her. And that is a story in and of itself. But she, at one point, I do sometimes communicate with my animals, but I just hear something in my heart. I don't know how to explain it, but I was holding her one day and she told me she was going to die soon, and I knew it. And I didn't know, and I knew she was getting elderly, but, and then she started acting, we were talking about observing, she started acting different. She started like, spending more time like with Michael. And then towards the end, when she got really sick, she wanted to hide. She wanted to hide somewhere. And, so I felt like she knew she was going to die. Like it was about 3 months before she died, I think. And we did have to euthanize her because she was like hanging in there, like in this like coma state. And then we finally thought, okay, we're going to have to take her in. And we remember we slept next to her all night, and she was still in this kind of coma state. And then I guess what had happened is like everything failed in her body. And so it kind of helped her just to leave her body and everything. And, but I was so amazed at her knowing that she was going to pass, and she didn't, she just showed us a lot of love. Actually, she didn't, like you said, she didn't seem scared or worried, so they're great teachers in that way.
No, they're not scared or worried about it at all. They don't have the apprehension. Sometimes animals will hang on longer than they really need to for their humans, because their humans are hanging on so tightly and don't want to let go. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they will hang on longer for the love and compassion for their human, which is a really challenging situation, because the simple fact that sometimes people are like so devastated and don't want to let go, and the animal is really suffering and really needs some help to let go. So that can be really for lack of other words, a kind of a twisty situation.
So I gather you've had to deal with that then in your work.
I have. And I just do my best to gently guide the person, because, a lot of the times the person needs the information more than the animal does in many cases. But with that case, I just try to gently guide the person to release the animal. Like that's really for its best to help that situation to happen. And help the animal to just know that it's okay to go. They don't have to take care of their person.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that in that case, sometimes I think a person's philosophy about death comes into play in terms of like for instance, in my case, I had studied with Tibetan Buddhists a lot, and they're really big on you waiting to grieve if you can, because you're trying to help people when they're dying. You're trying to put aside your own pain, and you'll have plenty of time to grieve later. You're trying to help them release. And so they have practices to try to help you to help them to release from their body so that they will have a positive and powerful experience. And so that they're really good at training even people like me to do that around someone or an animal that's dying. And I think it's a really good idea. It makes a lot of sense. They're going on a journey and you want to boost them. You want
to boost them and support them and love them into that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
I'm really glad I came across that idea early in life, because they really practice that, like I said. And of course you're gonna cry and miss whoever has passed, but there's a time and place where you can do that so that you're giving them the best possible energy to go off with, and that's love. That's part of love, and it's actually feels good to do it, even if it didn't work, which I think it does personally. It does feel like the right thing to do because you're trying to think of them, and you're not just thinking of yourself.
Exactly, it's having compassion for the other individual, whether it be an animal or a person. To take yourself out of it. Takes away all of your self-centeredness, for lack of other statements, and it puts you completely in service of that being to help them in their journey. Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to be present for them for that process, because it's not hard for them normally. It's really not hard. It's just loving to love them into the next vibration.
Right. Now, do you find, like, how some people have in their family, they'll have family members that stay along after they die as kind of like a guardian angel? Do you find that there are animals that will be in the spirit for a while to be sort of a guardian angel for somebody, or they'll appear maybe at a certain anniversary, just like with people?
Yes. Yeah, they'll hang around a lot. Like a lot of people when they pass, and same for animals and people, that when they pass, their spirit will hang out around longer to support and love the individual that's behind grieving. They do. I find that quite often, that they stay behind for as long as they can to just be present, and to be supportive. And animals coming back to visit, yeah, they definitely come back to visit. And help the person to get through things that they're going through, not just about the death of them, but like different scenarios in life.
Mm-hmm.
Or they come visit. And it's also awesome when you talk to somebody, when I talk to animal, that say there's two dogs in a household and one of them passes and the other one in the aftermath having a conversation of, they're aware that the other animal has shown up in a spirit form to visit or to be around.
And do you find that sometimes, like if an animal has been ill for a long time and then they're in the spirit world, that they feel a certain sense of relief to be freed from their body? Like sometimes people do, I know, if they've been ill for a while, then they have this sense of well-being when they're released.
Yeah, yes, for sure. It's a complete joy that they don't have to deal with their body anymore. They are very relieved. I've talked to many animals in the aftermath after they've passed that are definitely extremely happy to not be in their physical painful body. Mm-hmm. Like you can hear Ruby maybe in the background.
Oh, is that Ruby?
Yeah, she's like 21 now, and she's still cruising around. She's kidney disease too. She lost her eyesight, so she bounces off things. My friend says she's like bumper cars.
Aww.
But she's still doing her thing. But yeah, she's definitely one of them that's like, I'm kind of sick of being in this body. She's not completely ready to go, but she's definitely looking forward to not being in her old body anymore.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We had our friend that I was talking about earlier. She had a little pug. He was so cute, named Captain, and he was blind there for quite a while. And she had all these other dogs, and yet he managed to like hang in there for quite a while. I believe when he was blind, he was the cutest little dog. Just a great spirit,
It's all about the will to live.
Yeah, just like people, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. It's our will that keeps us here. really, more than anything else. It's our will and desire to be here. Or we can check out a little easier.
Well, another thing, we talked earlier, I wanted to bring up a little bit more about this, is animals as teachers. And I have personally I didn't grow up with birds, and it wasn't like I didn't like birds, but I grew up with dogs and cats. And so when I first had my first birds, I was 40, and I got these 2 zebra finches as a gift. And I have learned so much about not only birds, but they have actually taught me things that maybe I would not have learned any other way, because I'm kind of stubborn. So, and even though I read a lot, I'm always like, I don't know, but with animals, I just let them in, and I think I'm really open to a little bird teaching me, whatever they want to teach me. And it isn't always what you might think. Like, it isn't just about birds they're teaching me. I've learned lessons about life, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. Animals will teach you. They just have the innate wisdom within them. They may not like wander through life like we do, doing things and going places, whatever, but their innate wisdom is, hi, Ninus.
That's a beautiful cat.
She's wonderful. The innate wisdom that flows through them can teach us just everything about dealing with life in a much more peaceful, joyful way. I'm glad that you're open to listening to them and paying attention, because the life lessons are amazing. Speaking of lessons, I was, and the snake I used to have, a friend of mine was here yesterday, and he saw a picture with me, with the snake, and he was asking me questions, and I took him to, I had him for 7 years, and he was just like 11 feet long, maybe. And he kept getting upper respiratory infections, because I was young and I was moving around a lot, and I didn't have the right proper setup. And it just wasn't fair to him anymore. So I took him to the wildlife way station and to Hunga Canyon. I don't even know if they're open anymore, but I took him there. And I knew the guy from volunteering there. I knew the guy that dealt with the reptiles. And so I would go volunteer under him so I could go see my snake. And there was a big snake room. And some of these snakes were just humongous. And there was a real big one in there. She was a female. And he's like, for you to get in here, you have to get past her. He's like, so here's a little lesson for you. So with dogs, you put your hand like that, right? For them to smell. He's like, don't do that with the snake. They'll grab a hold of you. It'll be all over. So you have to put your hand up like this. So if they come at you, they're going to bounce off your hand, right? And not be able to grab a hold of it. So he's like, you got to get past this one. So, she agreed, let me pass. And while I was dealing with her, my snake, he like made himself through the crowd of other snakes, and he was sitting beside me like, hurry up, I had just learned, I was in like the ministry program, and I was learning a lot more about how energy attracts energy and how it moves together. And so I sat down when she gave me the okay. I sat down on the floor, and he lifted his body up, and he came and he laid across my lap. So when he moved in and laid across me, that real big snake and this albino snake came in, and they moved in at the same time. So he's on my lap, and when he moves over my lap, they come in close. Mm-hmm. As long as he laid there, I let him lay there as long as he wanted to. And when he lifted up his head and backed his body off of me, those 2 snakes backed their bodies away at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, that was quite a lesson they showed me about how energy works together and in sync with one another.
And for you people listening, when she was talking about the snake on putting her hand up, Angela had her palm out. So for people that just listen to the show, that's when you're approaching a snake. I thought that might be good to know. The palm is out, So we're getting close to the end of the show, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about your services and what you have to offer and how to reach you.
Oh, okay. You mean all my services or
Yeah,
just animals?
absolutely.
Oh, okay. So I'm an animal communicator, and I'm also a medium and a spirit communicator. So I can communicate to anybody or anyone, whether they're alive in a body or not. I'm a healer, so I do a lot of energy work to move the energy. I see the energy around you and of your organs and of all the channels in your body, not just your chakras, but the other energy channels in your body. So, with that ability and working with energy, I know how to move the energy to unblock things, to help heal the body, to help heal the mind, spirit, emotions. I'm forgetting something there. The body, the four parts. What else do I do? Oh, I do past life readings, which are really fun. They're not regressions. They're more of readings of like where you were before. And it always comes up that when that story comes up and shows itself to me, it's really always connects to the present time of what the person's going through, because it wants to bring through the wisdom of your spirit of what you've traveled through before to bring it into this lifetime, to use that wisdom to utilize it for your growth now. What else do I do? I do a lot of stuff. Some of it is advertised and some of it's not. I do things like house clearings and closing portals and that stuff. I don't really advertise that much, but I do that. What else do I do? Gosh, I'm on the spot. I'm like, I don't remember what else I do.
Well, I mean, you don't do this for a living, but I noticed that you're also very creative and you have some of your own like paintings on your website. And I saw you had a blog and you've done some writing but I think that gives people a good idea. And then your website is angelazeyn.com. It's spelled Zeyn, and we'll also have it on our website. We have all of the guests' information on our website, unless they don't give us one, which is very rare these days. Once in a while, you'll have someone that doesn't have a website, and they'll just have an email. But I just wanted to give a little bit of time for that, and maybe some last thoughts about animals and communicating, and maybe your feeling about why it matters even more, to sort of close out the show.
I would say it matters a lot because in the sense of it matters for the health and well-being of the animals, whether they're your pet or a stray animal or a wild animal. It matters to connect in whatever way you can, because their health and well-being is equal to your health and well-being on the planet. So I think it's really important that people become more open to nature around them. Like I said, whether you're their pets or the wild animal, because they're so important to all of our livelihood. Stand back, like I said before, and be present. Just drop into your body and be present. And when I say drop into your body, it's just get in your body, out of your head. We're also in our head so much. So when you can just be still, you can be so in tune with them when your cat's sitting beside you, and you can be in the moment with the cat, not thinking about what you have to do later or, what phone call you need to make or texting. I see a lot of people walking their dogs and they're on their phones so much, and the animal looks miserable.
Yeah.
Like, just be with me for a minute. Could you just go for a walk without your phone? I think it's just so important to be present, because they're live living beings and they want your love and attention. And when they are going through something, you'll be able to pick up on what they have to share with you so much more. So much quicker than going to the vet and feeling clueless. You just have the ability. We all have the ability to tap in and be one with one another. And, like I said, people wonder if sometimes their animals understand what they're saying to them or what they're trying to tell them. And they do understand when you're talking to them. They loud and clearly understand what you're saying. But you can also just do that. Use that visualization that you have, your imagination, and visualize things that you want to share with them and think of them. The message goes. It's an automatic thing. You don't have to figure out how to program it and press send. You just
Well, we are now out of time. Thank you so much, Angela. No, it was wonderful at the end. I love that. And thank you all for listening in. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure. And have a great week and enjoy nature.